My brothers and sisters, 10 years ago tomorrow, August the 29th, a Category 4 hurricane made landfall in Louisiana and on the Gulf Coast. It entered, breaching the levees in St. Bernard Parish, busting the levees through Orleans. It was a hurricane that brought destruction to everything in its path and left over 1,800 people dead. It left over 1 million people dislocated from their homes and was deemed the biggest natural disaster to ever hit U.S. soil. The floodwaters quickly washed away homes and destroyed businesses. The winds blew off rooftops quicker than you can open a can of beans. And as we sit here, there are certain moments in each and every single one of our lives that stick to our memory like glue. A moment that you remember so clearly, so vividly and distinctively, it gets hard to pry off your mind, hard to pry away from your memory no matter how much you want to. For some people, that day may be when they walked the stage during their high school graduation, as a good memory. For some people, that may be the day they got married, which is a good memory hopefully for most of us. For some, it may be the day they became a mother and father, the day they became a grandfather or grandfather or grandmother, a day they opened their first business, they got their first job. It could be things related to us personally or something that happened throughout the world. For example, 9/11. Such a horrific, disgusting, and appalling event that I bet each and every single one of us here remembers exactly where they were and when they were, when their jaw dropped to the ground at that exact moment. It was a moment that we felt as if the world stopped turning, as if time stopped ticking. Many of us remember that so clearly. But let's go back in time and talk about a moment that hit close to home, or hit home, for many of us and for many of y'all that I'm looking at right now in this congregation. And there are many of us indeed. Go back 10 years and you will remember exactly the time, exactly where you were when your eyes were glued to the TV. Close your eyes for a moment. Some of us were in Houston, Dallas, Tyler, Austin, Atlanta, Mobile, Shreveport, Baton Rouge, and even further. As you jog through your memory, you may remember the images of the Superdome and thousands of people that were stuck inside as pieces of the roof was falling. Images of thousands of people stranded on I-10. The images of hundreds of people, of dead bodies laying on the shoulders of the overpass. Hundreds of inmates all chained and shackled together on the shoulders. People on their rooftops standing and waving to rescue helicopters. People with no potable water to drink in spite of being surrounded by water. Nothing to shelter them from the sun. The images of all of those school buses waiting around for days and days to help people get to a better situation. We may remember the government's mishandling of the situation. We recall the names Aaron Broussard, Ray Nagin, Michael Brown, FEMA. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a test. There is a major hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. All of these images, for many of us who are sitting here, are coming back or will be coming back as this weekend unfolds. The looting, the crime and violence that started spreading the streets, the home invasions and robberies, We remember people dragging widescreen TVs in shopping carts in the middle of water when there's nowhere to plug them. Anderson Cooper, Wolf Blitzer, all of these images. We sat in our different cities that we evacuated to and watched. And for some brothers and sisters who are sitting here, some lost all, many lost less, but everyone lost something in the aftermath of Katrina. It left an impression on our minds. For months, this whole city was smelling like decomposed bodies that was sitting and rotting away in the atmosphere. For those who were not here and could not find out what was going on in their neighborhood, they were left nerve-wracked. Our brothers and sisters who are the new addition to our Mederi and Kenner family from Chalmette and St. Bernard, they lost everything. Their houses, their cars, their businesses, even the masjid was flooded to its rooftop. The oil reservoirs that were ruptured, the 10, 15 to 20 feet of sludge that was spread throughout St. Bernard Parish. I remember going to Masjid Yasin and picking up molded and sludged copies of the Mus'haf and the Quran from the street, from the liquor supply store next door. How many of us remember Masjid Ghuraba by UNO? Just before the hurricane, a massive renovation was made. It was extended, it was elevated, and all that was left there was the concrete slab. Right, Brother Anwar? I remember scraping pages of the Quran off the cement slab because they were plastered. The whole masjid wiped off. There was no pieces, there was no debris around that. All gone, all washed away. There were some Muslim families in our city who were saved from the rooftops, who busted through their ceilings to get on those roofs, who I know personally. Families who were rescued from the second floor of their house in St. Bernard 7 days after the hurricane passed. People I know who sat on those Black Hawk helicopters, who were dropped off on the runway. And alhamdulillah, at Masjid Abu Bakr, all the damage there was a little window, a little piece of glass on that front door. And there was even electricity at the masjid when there was no electricity in the block. We all remember the drive back, showing your ID in order to get into your neighborhood. The Humvees and the military presence that was at every intersection, pointing their guns at you as you were crossing the intersection, standing by to enforce the sundown to sunrise curfew. FEMA inspectors, FEMA checks, insurance agency, all of these things we went through 10 years ago. And I remember the Ramadan that fell afterwards shortly. Not everyone had functioning kitchens. Everyone brought everything to the iftar. French fries, tater tots, beans, dal, whatever. Everyone put it in the middle in a pot. And you never had the same thing twice. I bring up all of this, all of these depressing moments, depressing images, so that we can take some time to reflect on a few things. Even though it's such a beautiful day. Why go through all of these depressing moments? For the reason that, look, things happen to us in life. Things happen to every single person. And that is what life is all about. Whether it be good, or whether it be bad, or what we perceive as bad. But one of the things that we learn as a lesson through Katrina, or through whatever anyone is going through, is that everything happened through the will, wish, might, and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We understand that His plan unfolds every morning the sun rises. It is His command that unrolls everything as the sun sets. And there is no might, There is no force, there is no wall, no levee, no dome, no first line of defense, no amount of preparedness, no amount of supplies, no backup plan, no shelter of last resort. There is nothing in our wallets, there is nothing in our bank balances that can hold back what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided for us. This is why we are reminded, this is what we are reminded of as we hear the adhan, Allahu Akbar. Allah is the greatest. Allah is the biggest. There is nothing that is greater than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing more powerful than Allah. There is nothing that can shadow His might. To Allah is all the dominion, and He shares that with no one. Many of us lived firsthand through this nightmare that was named after a lady called Katrina. And as I took you down this walk in memory lane, I'm not trying to, as I move on, I'm not trying to downplay what happened to all of us. I'm not trying to downplay what any of us is going through in their lives. But think to yourself that sometimes in our lives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us trip and fall. Some more than others. Allah makes us trip and fall because we are supposed to find something when we are down there on the ground. And this brings me to my second point. Let's fast forward 10 years from that day, right now. Many of us have bounced back really well. Many of us are doing better now than ever before from a worldly standpoint, from a financial point of view. And some may still be limping in the aftermath of Katrina. Regardless of our situation, we are grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for being granted and gifted the opportunity to work hard and the opportunity to be alive and the opportunity to look back and stand today to talk about it and sit to hear about it. This is a great blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we've made it by 10 years. Think about other places in the world where calamity strikes. Think about it. The aftermath and effect is 10 times worse. Think of all the places that war is going on, where there seems to be no end in sight, where there is no evacuation plan, there is no warning, there is no forecast, there is no cooler and packing up your car and going to a hotel or a motel or become an unwelcome guest with family and friends. Look at the ahwal and the conditions of Syria. Look at the ahwal in Palestine, in Burma, in Iraq, in Africa. And all of the countries in the world. Not meaning to exclude anyone. And I'm not even talking about the droughts and the natural disasters. I'm talking about all the constant war. All the constant fighting and killing and murder and massacre that is going on. It's still going on. This month, this week, today, right now, as I am standing. We remember the scenes from Katrina. But how do we process and register the images and videos of all the brutality that is going on throughout the world? How do we process and register what is going on overseas? Of innocent babies being thrown against the wall, kids being stepped on, trampled on, their skulls being crushed, being tied up like animals, being teased and mocked, people lining up and taking turns to beat these kids, to slap these kids, to burn them with cigarette butts. How do these images make us feel? How do they register in our hearts? And I'm just talking about the kids. You know, as parents, we understand the plight of our children when they are mocked at school, when they are made fun of, when they feel sad when someone mispronounces their name. But what about our other children? What about our children in Burma, in Syria and Palestine? Kids who are using empty, dirty water bottles as Legos. Kids who are living their childhood as refugees all over in refugee camps, like in Turkey. Burmese children who are living with nothing but the earth as their bedding and the sky as their blanket. All of the poor widows who have lost their support. All of the parents who have lost their children. And only those people in this audience who have lost a child, those mothers who have had miscarriages, only these people can understand what it feels like to lose a child. What about all the drone strikes that are going on? What about all of the explosions, all of the bombings? Just because we in America, sitting here, are doing our own things, just because we don't have the time to watch or read the news, and the news, that's another whole topic. But in general, just because we may have turned a blind eye to what's going on in the world, just because we don't know what's going on, or just because we don't care or don't follow what's going on, God forbid we don't care, does not mean that it's not happening. It is happening. مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم مثل الجسد الواحد. The Prophet ﷺ said that the mu'mineen, the believers, in their mutual kindness, in their compassion, sympathy, and care for one another, are like one body. إِذَا اشْتَكَى مِنْهُ عُضْوٌ تَدَاعَى لَهُ سَائِرُ الْجَسَدِ بِالسَّهْرِ وَالْحُمَّى. When one limb suffers, the whole body responds to it with wakefulness, loss of sleep, and fever. If we step on a nail, is this all we do? Shake our foot starts going in pain? No, we say, ah! Our whole body moves down to grab that foot immediately as a reflex. We don't even have to think about it. Our whole body comes into motion. Our mouth sometimes even says something bad. Brothers and sisters, this is one limb. We have other limbs that are suffering. Limbs that are being cut off, that are being chopped off. Limbs that are being blown off, torn off. Limbs that are being burnt. Limbs that are being imprisoned and detained against their will. We have brothers and sisters who are being torn apart from each other. Mothers being torn away from their children. Fathers being torn away from their families. Women being raped. Kids being forced into the streets to fend for themselves and survive. فَأَيْنَ السَّهَرُ وَأَيْنَ الْحُمَّةِ. Where is the wakefulness? Where is the restlessness in the ummah? Where is the anxiety? Where is the agitation? Where is the worry and concern? You know, it's said about Katrina that Hurricane Katrina will go down as one of the worst abandonments of Americans on U.S. soil in U.S. history. People were frustrated. When is the help going to come? When will the help come through? Help us. Help us. People had signs. Help us. Save us. What about our brothers and sisters all over the world who are holding up this sign? Help us. Save us. What about this huge disconnect that we have? Bis-sahri wal-humma, with wakefulness and fever. Do we break a sweat? Let alone a fever? Do we shed a tear? Does it raise our eyebrow? Or do we raise our hands in prayer? It's easy for me to feel the pain of those in my family, for those who I care for my loved ones. It's easy for us to sympathize with people who we share the same background with. What about people overseas? What about people abroad? This is what Islam is all about. الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ, those people who have faith in the unseen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَيُقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ, those people who establish the prayer, who put their forehead on the ground to show humility before Allah. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, and to spend from what Allah has given them in the first place. Islam is about caring for one another, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And if we don't feel for others the way we feel for our own, then this is a serious change that we need to make in our attitude. And it is a huge question mark on our faith and iman. Now coming back to 10 years ago tomorrow, looking back at all the years, brothers and sisters, we have a lot to be thankful for. Every single day of our lives. Because a lot of people went through worse than what we did. A lot of people are going through worse than what we are going through. My family personally, we had a huge setback. And I was in the same boat as all of us who were here through that. But I'm not going to stand here and share my story. Because life is full of setbacks. It's full of obstacles, challenges, and hurdles. And guess what? What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Like an archer who pulls back his arrow, right? An archer who pulls back his arrow. The more he pulls it back, once it is let go, it soars far and fast into the sky, and it hits its target. Likewise, when we look at life, it should seem to us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pulling us back. We have all these challenges, but when the time comes to release, the sky's the limit. Like a washing machine are our problems. They twist us, turn us, spin us, knock us around. But in the end, we come out cleaner, brighter, and better than before. So my brothers and sisters, as we go back in time, as we commemorate, as we remember, whatever you want to call it, 10 years of Katrina, be thankful for the fact that we got a second chance. Be thankful for the fact that it could have always been worse. Thankful for the lesson of valuing life more than anything. Don't look at the glass half empty. You know what? Don't even look at the glass as being half full. Be thankful that you have a glass. A glass called life. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.